I mean, it's still gonna need a lot of conversation, but these two documents, and they'll be uploaded for the public. And of course, they're available if anybody is here. Go
And
ahead.
can I just mention one thing?
Yeah, of course.
So those who have been involved in the housing subcommittees know this, but I, am not going to facilitate the short-term rental subcommittee anymore. And the reason is, like I've said all along, that, yeah, I'm like creating the space in my basement. But I would never use this forum and like any public forum for personal benefit, but I just wanna avoid the perception of that. And so, Neil is aware, David's aware, Andrew's aware, so I'm just not gonna facilitate that anymore.
Got it.
Okay? Yep.
Anybody else have anything before we kind of jump in? All right, we're hearing none. So I've mentioned this a few times. So we have the city of Longmont got awarded money from the state of Colorado for brown mitigations and brownfield assessments and then mitigations. As part of that grant, they were required to bring in a few smaller communities. So us, the town of Lyons, the town of Cortez.
It's Longmont, okay.
And Firestone. So us and Firestone, we're close, that makes sense. The Cortez must be a relationship that we just, I don't know, but kudos to Longmont for spreading the love across the state.
Sorry.
Yeah, so what that is, there's a pot of $2 million for kind of two-pronged planning. So we have a group of environmental planners and they've done a few assessments within town. I know Neil is sitting kind of on that committee, kind of looking at that, but so they'll do individual property assessments for individuals that have commercial property owners that think that they may have brownfield issues. And it's non-punitive, so it's just a report. These are the issues that we found. These are the ways to mitigate, and these are possible funding measures that we can take in order to, to see what we can do. And what it does with the property owner, if they go to sell that property, the individual or corporation that's buying that piece of property, they're going to have this assessment anyways. So this is just our property, our current property owners being able to run out in front and be able to say, oh, there is an old, gas tank buried in that corner of the lot. That's an issue that we have on my property. But again, it's completely voluntary. It's only if property owners want to do it, and it could serve them as an asset. On the other side, we do have a pretty good map that David and Stantec worked on prior to his leaving, of trying to pull together a district with multiple brownfield properties in it. And I met with their planning team 2 weeks ago, and we simplified the map, and I just want to run this by you all. So it's kind of your north to south barriers are High Street to Park, and then 5th to 3rd for those boundaries. And that's kind of the study area.
Park Street.
So it'll go Park to High, here south to north.
But there's a Park Avenue too.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, Park Drive.
Excuse me, Park Avenue.
Yeah.
Park Drive, you mean?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And then 5th to 3rd, and that captures kind of our downtown business core and where they've already found a few brownfield properties. David had it originally kind of a flagpole all the way up to the old water tower, but that just kind of, it would make the study area, it's just not congruent. So what in order to have a good plan, we need kind of a block system. And so I met with them, and they're gonna put together a work plan about, what they feel we could address through this plan, but then I'll bring it to you all cause they can discuss anything. Really, the only parameter in this area-wide plan, and really what it is a small area plan, that we're getting. But we can address, urban infill and redevelopment, we can address transportation, we can address a whole range of planning topics within this sub-area plan. And what we'll get at the end will be a planning document, kind of a comprehensive plan just for this, just for these blocks, which is something well needed. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, because I thought this was to address environmental impacts.
It is, well,
So how do you grow that beyond that to look at transport, the things you just mentioned? That's where I'm
sure.
confused, trying to move
Yeah,
it.
so it's all about how to direct investment to mitigate and redevelop these brownfields. So, making a more attractive street corridor or adding bicycle lanes or a greenway corridor. Again, their approach is really whatever the town decides is appropriate, but with the end game of ensuring that redevelopment and mitigation of these brownfields can be a priority.
It seems to me, if we have 2 million or we gotta split it up.
Yeah, we split it up,
ways and
that's correct.
Come up with a plan, it seems like the environmental mitigation would burn through all that and not make improvement. So I think this
Sure.
is good news. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of puzzled. I thought it was just a mitigation effort, but
No, it's two-pronged. It's the individual assessments, and for each town, they would like to do one of these area-wide plans to see how to link the mitigation of all these properties into urban redevelopment mitigation.
So it's not the mitigation at all.
So again, one prong is mitigation.
They would mitigate?
Oh, no, they do not mitigate,
Okay,
sorry.
this is just a plan.
Yeah, this
to
is just
mitigate.
plan.
And
That's correct.
As part of that plan, you can also
That's
talk
right.
about all the other things that possibly. Okay.
Yeah, and they identify, we have a railroad corridor, so they identify like, oh, well, common issues along corridors, arsenic, greenway projects are great because they can come in with an entire, railroad corridor. We can mitigate that greenway is a great way to do that. And then they provide funding mechanisms. They don't provide, but they lead in that direction.
Does the area include both sides of Fifth?
Inside those streets, if,
So east of Fifth and west of Third, but not, he's saying not west of Fifth, not on the other side of Fifth.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why, because that would seem to be an area that should be looked at,
sure,
because it was an old gas station and
okay.
it's now a used car lot and.
Oh, that used to be a gas station, that was a car?
Yeah.
car
No,
dealer.
on the west side of Fifth, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, all of this is flexible. So if that's an area where the PCDC would like to see included in this study, it's completely doable.
I think it'd be, do we know where some brownfields actually exist right now?
So they have a map, they're gonna send me with that work plan of where they think these areas are gonna be, and then maybe we can be a bit more scientific, when we get that map and draw that line. This was just taking conversations that David had with them and trying to fit it into a grid. But yeah, I can certainly, when we get that, I can bring it back and we can then move
I
forward.
think that would be a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be that just say both sides of Fifth
okay.
from Park Drive up to,
Right.
High Street, yeah.
Okay.
And what was the deal? They used to have the water tower in there?
Yeah.
Cemetery?
He was following the street up to a
To try
flagpole
to include that water
to
tower?
see what the water tower was, and we talked about it, there could be lead paint issues but that would just, I think that would direct funds away from, a more consolidated approach, but if that's something that you all would like to see in the study, it's completely fine. He also had a flagpole kind of going down and picking up these lots as well,
Yeah.
the Western Star, Lions. But again, they, you know, they kind of live in a different place and have a different character. But again, if that's something that you all would like to see, it can't be so big because then we can't study it with the money that we have. Trying to come up with the most consolidated district possible so we can put as much planning power into just those lots.
Where's the grant from?
Oh, let's see, it comes from the EPA and then
Okay.
comes
EPA.
down through, sorry,
No, EPA, yeah.
and then funnels through Colorado Department of,
Health and Environment,
yeah,
yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
Public Health and Environment, okay.
So
so,
it sounds like it kind of started with this brownfield assessment from the environmentalists, but it's evolved to how could we leverage
Yeah.
the brownfield assessments and focus on redevelopment of Main Street urban core
yeah, and
lines.
And the EPA ran this same program in Asheville, North Carolina. And if you ever visit Asheville, it's a nice city, but the New Belgium Eastern Branch was developed on a brownfield site. And a lot of this study it was everything from stockyard to a rail yard to where people just in the city dump their refuse for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And that project, along with what's called the River Arts District, was kind of this exact same approach, just a redevelopment.
City of Denver too, and Elitch's is on the old rail yard.
Yeah.
And a lot of downtown Denver.
Yeah, it seems to make sense to keep the scope small, like you
Yeah.
said, instead of, especially given the situation in our downtown,
Sure.
landfill economic development.
How did we get the grant? I mean, those three
We-
communities?
Again, I think it was a directive from the EPA that if you're a metropolitan, if you're a city over a certain population, or perhaps under, I don't know their rules, but there was a rule that said that you had to bring in another smaller community
Okay.
in the grant, so.
No, that must be how okay, because smaller communities like us can't afford some of these
Yeah.
things, so
Yeah.
that's how they,
That's great.
yeah, so that's how they, and they do pass through grants like that all the time, when transportation happens, they do it through, the state has the things passed through the state, well, this would be the college transportation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's just an update. I met with them, not last week, but the week before, and they were gonna draw up a work plan, schedule, and kind of see at least what the process would look like for Lions, and then they'll give us that map. This at least was the area that, in my mind, kind of hearing the need for concentrated economic development and redevelopment, within our downtown core. It just seemed like a great opportunity to get a small area plan, and address some of these issues. The other one, if we can get through this one and we get it completed and, buttoned up, then we can, if there's still money, which I doubt there will be, but we could try to address the eastern corridor as well, and do one for there, so. But at any rate, that's that.
Just one quick final question. So our portion, whatever it is, I'm sure it's not 25% of the 2 million is for just the plan, not the mitigation.
Yeah, so the plan and if individual property owners wanna do the assessments. So
Got
they
it.
would, when we met, this was like my second week here, but when we met, they would like to have, around 20 to 30 properties, just so they can kind of bolster this map and show that there really is a need for this redevelopment and mitigation, so.
The outcome of the plan is they want to identify brownfield properties that are right for, and have them environmentally evaluated. And then it would be up to the owners to then actually conduct the actual assessments on them, is that?
No, they do the assessments.
They do, okay, they do.
That's
okay.
right. Yeah, and it
Okay.
costs the property owner nothing, so on
Oh, they
that,
do the assessment, and then the owner can take that information and see what they can do
yeah,
to.
they
to-
hand it
to-
over
to like a developer say, hey, we have this property and
That's
we
correct.
already identified these environmental issues. How can we mitigate them and develop it and make it, okay.
Yeah, cause like I said, it'll come up in the future sale of that property anyways,
Mhm.
you know, go ahead.
So if I, just to play devil's advocate,
Sure.
I mean, if I'm a property owner, would I really want to know if I'm really hoping to sell it?
Mhm.
Well,
It's
again,
kind of like if you find out you've got mold in your house, not everybody
Mhm.
talks about it.
I'm
Just
selling,
saying.
I'm selling a house right now that was built 1915. It's going on the market Saturday. If anybody wants to live relatively close to New Belgium and Asheville, I've got the spot for you. But we had an inspector, because it's an old house. We're not gonna disclose that information. But instead of someone else's inspector finding an issue, and then it locks, it messes up the sale of that property. You know, again, they don't have to disclose.
Mhm.
It's non-punitive. It's not like there's a federal register of these things, being started. But the property owners will at least know before their property goes on sale that they have an issue that may or may not come up,
Mhm.
in the buyer's environmental assessment.
Mhm. Oh, I thought that once you go there, it has to be disclosed legally.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know. The Stantec said that they were non-punitive, but I can clarify that for the board if that's.
I just think you might get a question where somebody
Sure.
might be like, I don't know
Right.
how much I want to know.
Yeah, for the real estate disclosures, I guess you're right, like the residential stuff.
Right, yeah, if you have
Seller's
your own
property
inspection, it
disclosure.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, so you're, I mean, yeah, you would probably,
Maybe different states.
you would
do it
pay for an
differently.
inspection anyway, so hopefully you would
Yeah.
have a good inspector, yeah.
But I can certainly, I can clear that up. Brought a pen. Must have- Anyways, yeah, that's a pretty good point there. All right, any other questions about that? So that's 1 and 2. Number 3, the Peak to Peak Housing Authority. So I brought this up a few weeks ago, broadly. So right now we fall under Boulder County's Housing Authority, and we're just kind of lumped in, and that's not a problem. We've had good partnerships, but Lyons has unique issues, and we need to solve problems a unique way. Nederland feels the same, that they have unique issues. They're just different than your typical kind of Plains Front Range Boulder County communities. Gilpin County feels the same, non-urbanized Gilpin County, so not Black Hawk or not Central City, but your other smaller areas. Even Clear Creek County is interested as well in being a potential partner of this new idea of a peak to peak housing authority. So going from the Sasquatch store or Idaho Springs on I-70, following the peak to peak and coming down to Lyons. So all of the communities along that corridor, we were awarded $104,000 from DOLA to go and hire a consultant to do a feasibility study of if we can have how an affordable housing, kind of a multi-jurisdictional, multi-county housing authority would work, and then kind of what that funding would look like, and just what that would look like. The only other one, it was called the Roaring Fork Housing Authority. It's called something else, but it's.
That's out west on the other side.
Yes, it's Pitkin County,
Yeah.
Aspen, so they're the only other one, but they're not as rural, so this is gonna be kind of a test product for Colorado, and I think it's pretty exciting. The kind of the end result for Lyons is right now we don't have a housing staff, nor do we have enough work for a 40-hour housing staff. I mean, we just don't. Neither does Nederland, neither does Gilpin County. So we'll get the feasibility study to see about what a regional or a multi-jurisdictional housing authority looks like. But then also out of that will be a grant on the other side of a shared housing staff and working for this kind of being a range rider in between these communities, to help support those communities for housing issues. So that's, so we were just awarded the grant. We haven't even been given the funds. Gilpin County is the primary awardee. So they just have more planners, they have more staff. But each planning commission and planning department will be pretty involved, within this process to just kind of make sure, again, that we're represented and how does this work? Where it really matters is, again, every other community besides Nederland, I believe, in Boulder County has an individual housing authority. And so, again, it's showing the county that we're solving issues in a unique way. So that way, not to talk about the IGA, but we don't have to try to address these housing issues through an IGA. And we kind of express that confidence through our own locally controlled mechanisms. And that's the ultimate kind of hopeful outcome, is that we can form a system that works for smaller communities and communities that are far different and have far greater growth constraints than, other communities within the county. So I will keep you all up to date, but that's just kind of the staff update for the Peak to Peak Housing Authority. Then, sorry, go
Just
ahead.
a quick question, if this comes to fruition, then there would be partial FTEs that would be assigned to Lions, and ultimately our budget would be impacted long term?
I don't think so. So the goal, at least short term, is DOLA has a supportive planning grant. So you're actually getting state funds to pay for an FTE.
Okay, so it's not just an initial assessment.
That's correct. So that would, again, that's what we're going through this grant, is to see how not to cause burden to, our communities. Because again, this isn't a job that's going to be, it might be part-time for 3 communities, it's a lot easier to get somebody that's going to work 25 hours across 3 communities than 2 hours in one community. I don't even know how you do that, but so anyways, not much. It'll be a while before, anything happens. But definitely this will be something that we're working on in the spring.
And what kind of functions would that person have, or would this housing authority do? Like, is it just about affordable housing, or is there a whole?
Yeah, so again, I think what that looks like is this first planning exercise. But anything from, if we do have a deed restriction program, administering those deed restrictions, ensuring compliance, running, if there's, if they're like in Nederland, they might have some rental units come open that are kind of owned and operated, or I don't know, but it's that type of work.
It's really, but it's all under the umbrella of affordable housing.
Yeah, of workforce housing.
Workforce.
That's correct. So,
Okay.
so it'll cover, again, workforce and attainable. And what'll be really important for the communities to define is kind of what that percentage looks like.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah, I think it's a cool idea. And, again, it'll be a fun activity to work on. The next one, so a bill passed to be signed by the governor, I imagine this week, last week. And again, this in no way is meant to be fear mongering, but this is the importance of Colorado communities. And I've lost it. Hold on just a second. Oh, here it is. So this is why it's growing more and more important for communities to have local control of their housing programs, or at least trying to figure out these issues. So this bill passed it passed the House and through the Senate. The final hasn't come out, but this is the final, red line version. So everything here will likely, again, be signed by Governor Polis. I don't see why he would not. So the short title of the section is the Home Harmonizing Occupancy Measures Equitability Act. And so what that does, every town, pretty much across the US, defines family as, a family, blood related, whatever, that, or no more than 3 unrelated persons, no more than 7, no more than 5. So what this bill did was now municipalities nor counties can have that definition, nor can regulate familial relationships in any zone district.
That's interesting, actually.
So what it does is, any house that's not within an HOA, because HOAs still have the authority to have these, but it does put a lot of pressure on smaller, not, minimally funded HOAs to legally take care of these issues. So, throughout my career, I've had at least 4 of these where an HOA contacts the town and is able to use the familial code. Well, there's 7 guys living in this house, kick them out. And we could use the town's code because they were 5 or more unrelated or 3 or more, and we could take care of it. So now the onus is completely on HOAs to take care of this. And we've already contacted the HOAs
So
within the
HOAs
community.
keep that measure, but not the town.
Yeah,
Okay.
so anywhere that's, in downtown, historic towns that don't have HOAs, now, unless it is a health and safety concern or a fire concern, as many people can live there as they see fit. So it doesn't strip, single family zoning, but it certainly does turn single family residences into multifamily residences overnight. Again, outside of HOA control.
What are the downsides of this? And what are the upsides?
See, I'm trying to think, because the reason I'm so interested is that, when I lived in downtown Denver, the 7th Avenue Historic District, I knew somebody who went to my church, they had a house in the 7th Avenue Historic District, and they could only have the city of Denver, their code, they only could have blood relations living in there. And these are all historic turn of the century historic mansions. So I'm wondering, now that that's been removed, that means you could, have.
It's a frat house.
Yeah, exactly, it's basically a frat house, yeah.
So anybody can live with anybody.
Yeah, so say you have a large house downtown. You have a 6-bedroom, large house, not in an HOA.
Yeah.
Now you could have 2 people in every room, as long as it's not causing a fire hazard. So upside, if I put my aspirational planner, sure, we get more housing. But, again, it's not exactly the housing I think that our community is trying to build. We're just throwing a lot of people, possibly too many people, into a house. Also, a lot of the neighborhoods that aren't in HOAs and aren't in subdivisions that are going to be impacted by this do not have the transportation networks, do not have the on-street parking. And we'll talk about
Yeah.
parking here in a minute, but there are a lot of other things. The other big one is utilities. So a lot of these single family homes came in as single family and they paid the city or the town a single family tap, or they paid for a certain amount of water right on base assumptions about being single family. Some of these are gonna go way up in water usage, and it's gonna be if enough of these flip in some of these communities, it will have an impact on water and sewer usage for sure, that was not originally thought about when these houses were built.
I mean,
What is the name, what is this, SB what or what?
I think its final is 241007.
I know we're not here to debate this and you're
Yeah.
just sharing, which is super helpful.
Yeah,
But I'm also thinking just of you know, if you have a single family home, it has X number of bedrooms. I mean, yeah, theoretically, you could cram 2 people per bedroom or whatever, but how likely is that to really happen on an extensive basis? Like,
I will say, actually, Amy,
Boulder on the hill.
did you get the email from our HOA that, cause we live in Lions Valley Park,
Yeah,
and we can't rent out individual rooms. Part of the HOA is that we can't rent out individual rooms in our houses.
when did you receive this? I'm just curious.
Like in the last week or two.
Okay, so we sent all of the, so I'm glad the HOAs
Yeah.
are trying to start taking care of
Conversations,
this. Yeah,
okay.
okay.
I
Yeah,
can give you an example.
sure.
In Stone Canyon, where I live. There was a house that went up for sale. And the owner of the house lives in Boulder, doesn't live in the house. He rented it to 3 different families, which were young couples, and I
One had a
believe
baby.
one had a baby or
There
2.
might have been 2 children.
So there may have been two babies, 2 children in the house.
Mhm.
So a single family residential house had 6 adults plus 2 children, multiple pets, so on and so forth. So the owner of the house charged an extraordinary amount of money, but doesn't even live in our town. And, it could have worked fine, but it's an HOA and they're not happy about it and, you know, so, in fact, there's an election now in the HOA to really restrict it.
And we as a town staff talked about the enforcement issues at this house. But now that this is passed, the town wouldn't even be involved.
And the people, I think, have left and now the house is up for sale. I think the owner of the house that created this has upset and given up.
It's the owner, a realtor,
I think something.
that's been trying to lease it for a long time. Okay.
So anyways, in your more historic districts with larger homes, this could have, you know, a pretty large effect.
and that's exactly what I was saying in downtown Denver, that single family, they like their single family, it's kind of the larger home that maintains kind of that single family, dog and have kids atmosphere versus what you like a party or front, house effect, yeah.
So I just was reading the fiscal note, so I go to the fiscal note,
Okay.
just like
Sure.
summaries. And it says, the second sentence of the summary is, a local government may limit the number of inhabitants in a dwelling if the regulation is tied to a minimum square footage per
Yeah.
person necessary to regulate health, safety, and welfare. So is that maybe what you're thinking about the next step could be if we wanted to think about something to?
Yeah, but we have to base it on, so we reached out to the fire department already and are seeing how we can, because it can't be arbitrary, you know, because we'll get, you know, small towns now will get called on this. So it has to be scientific.
Right.
Why is it 3 people per how many square feet or whatever? But this doesn't go into effect until July. So, once we hear back from the fire department and kind of once this is signed by the governor and real work needs to begin, that'll probably be 1 or 2 workshops
Yeah.
to get that code updated. Because at the minimum, we have to take those it's gonna result in a code change anyways, or code amendment anyways, because we have to take those regs out of our code. So that'll go through you all anyway. So it would be good if we removed and added what we can in tandem.
Does it apply to all types of housing? For example, ADUs?
Good question.
I don't know about ADUs, and it does not if and we don't have any of well, we do now, Summit. So if it's dedicated and deed restricted as affordable or attainable, this doesn't apply. Those properties are exempt. And what that does, which those developers are governments anyways, but it keeps from cramming kind of more, workers into, units that are built for single family, So this spreadsheet is current as of last Friday. So there are right now these are the bills that I'm following. There are 42 of these. These are all housing related right now, that are active. And these aren't all that are going to occur, not just this cycle, but the next. I've highlighted the ones and I've added the fiscal notes. And I'll send these out. I just wanted to provide some context. So number one's already been done. So kudos up to these, our elected officials. Oh, yeah, of course. So I've highlighted the ones that really could affect local control of our land use. So again, this is the one we just discussed. We can go through any of these, but again, I've tried to summarize as best I can. So this one, judicial review of local land use review. So again, this, I'll just give summary. I don't want to read, this will just take way too long. So this will give, people will have, if they do have to go through a process with a community and they end up having, to go all the way up, have attorneys, towns will be far more on the hook now, and far more liable for, land use decisions, surrounding housing. Accessory dwelling units, this was to make them a use by right, which we've already done, so kudos to us. Local government's rights to property for affordable housing, this just gives local governments more ability in real estate transactions, and so that one won't really affect land use, but I threw it in here. This isn't a housing issue, but this is something that we will, and the town will need to start considering as well, because as housing issues grow, childcare issues are growing, and the state is going to become much more directive in providing, or municipals allowing and, providing space for childcare. And I don't know that if we have a history in that lines, I don't know, but a lot of communities, it's been very difficult to start childcare facilities. And now all of those parents, one of them can't work, or they're always late, or they're always leaving early, and it's just turned into an economic issue.
So can I pause on that?
Yeah.
Does that mean it's childcare facilities in home daycare type?
No,
Okay, just facilities in
just
general.
facilities in general.
Services of childcare service.
Okay.
So anyways, but yeah, just nothing to do with housing, but if I get on a bully pulpit about childcare facilities, this is why.
There already, HOAs can't prohibit family childcare.
Cannot.
Cannot. That passed like the year before.
Yeah.
Janice Marchman is on childcare.
Yeah.
Our rep.
And so, this one hasn't been introduced, but it keeps saying, APA's lobbyists, the Colorado League of Municipalities are counting on a bill also being introduced to start stripping HOAs from controls as well. So again, that one will be a lot harder, and I imagine we'll go to the Supreme Court, as I've said before, but we'll see. There's two kind of mobile homes. They have to do with kind of conditions, but also a kind of right to own within mobile home parks. This one's gonna be a big one, because we are in Dr. Cog. And so what this one could do, and when it meets its final revisions, it strips a lot of our abilities as a community to provide minimum parking standards. Whether good or bad, that's kind of the end result or end goal is, for an ADU. And we've talked about this before, should we require 1 or 2 parking spots for an ADU? Well, what the state's telling us is we probably shouldn't be, because that's limiting development capabilities of ADUs and other affordable housing.
Isn't that what Neil kind of countered in Boulder, that the way they deal with some, but they make something affordable by if it's affordable, then you don't have to have a parking spot or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was a
he-
development incentive.
Yeah, development incentive, yeah.
The difference though, is we don't have public transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it can make it very difficult
Sure.
to not have a car.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So this one, again, it's more for DOLA, so I won't go through it. This is just about funding. Why it's important for us is what you just noted. We're not transit oriented. So a lot of, this money, we're really going to have to show if we wanna be able to leverage funds and get funds. And that's kind of a hope for the peak to peak is we don't have transit, and it doesn't make financial sense a lot of times to have transit in these communities. So, but what can we do to still gain funds, through a lot of, Prop 123 funds and the like?
Golf carts for everybody.
That's right, golf
Yeah.
carts for all. I don't really know what this one is about. Let's see. Stay right toward. Okay, so this is just to prioritize again, if you're getting funding for affordable housing or other, just any state funding. Incentivize development that aligns with state climate and air quality goals, encourage water conservation and efficiency, incentivize affordable housing development, and promote access to transit that aligns with housing goals, support economic development, revitalization of downtowns. So again, just kind of trying to frame up. Let's see, exempt small communities from HOA requirements. So this concerning exempting certain small communities from certain requirements of the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act. Under the current law, certain small homeowners associations are exempt from various requirements of the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act based on the HOA's creation date, number, residential units, and average annual common expense liability. So what this is proposed to is increase the number of units allowed from 10 to 20. So again, it looks like this is just starting to make it harder to fall under the classification. So if I'm pessimistic, it's squeezing and taking little bitty power, or making it harder to be an HOA in a small community. So that way, when these larger changes occur, perhaps there's less buckets to have to fill, but I don't know. Let's see, the last two accessory dwelling units. Again, this is just to promote the number of converted accessory dwelling units, and there was a pot of money that was tagged to one of these ADU, ADU. Sorry, I call them ARUs, but ADU bills, and it granted a lot of firms. I think Fading West was awarded money, but a lot of these companies that specialize in ADU provision, it gave some of these companies money for, development of techniques or to be able to fund these better in the future. I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but
Well, there was the innovative housing, program, IHIP or whatever, and that there were some incentives for modular housing there. So it could be related to that.
okay. And then the next one is just DOLA, again, the state directing DOLA to do work within certain parameters. So again,
It's the right to remedy construction defects and,
sorry, oh, this one?
line 30, but I don't know, I think it's gonna pass the Senate and maybe the House. And we've talked about that a year ago or so, how construction defects, litigation has really halted the multifamily for sale townhomes and stuff. So it's really taken out that missing middle we've talked a lot about.
Okay,
So, I don't know. It's a maybe.
let me highlight that.
It could be, it'll take forever and a day and
Okay.
probably go through lots of legal action, but if it passes, it could be in the right direction
It
over
pretty much
time.
killed that whole market, what, a
Yeah,
decade or
Yeah.
longer ago?
probably, will. Yeah.
in the whole state.
Huh. So anyways, I'll follow these, and again, I didn't know about a lot of, I've truly only been following about 4 of them, so these others I don't know enough about. But any that are kind of evolving that will really impact kind of what we do as a community and as a town, I will certainly keep you all posted and try maybe, at least once a month to give just a brief, hey, this is what's going on, and that way we can align any work that needs to be done. Any further questions?
So you said you're sending this out to us?
Yeah, I'll send this out to you.
Perfect.
And all these links are live, so you can go in, read as much as you want, so.
And Andrew, I thought at one point you had said there's like 10 bills going through that are related to ADUs. I think we talked about a couple. Am I misremembering?
No, so again, last year, there was a large package it was huge bill. It was, a big project from the governor's office, and it failed. So now what we're seeing is, instead of one large bill, it's now being, right now, just this session, we have 42. So all of the components that we're looking for within that bill, it seems are now being dissected out into their own easier to tackle bills.
Thank you.
So right now we have 2 ADU oriented bills, but yeah, I imagine there will be a few more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right.
Thank you for that. I have one, just thought, going back to the brownfield assessment. I think at some point it's gonna be really important to include the ecology board.
Okay,
And that's I think this is right up their alley.
Mhm.
sweet. All right. Any other questions? But again, the first one that we went over is going to be law, so that's one that we will have to work on. So what is next? The downtown mixed use district. So as I had noted, I think 2 meetings ago in my work plan, our comp plan calls for kind of 2 mixed use districts. I kind of see 3, but really 2. So we have kind of the downtown area, that block system that I showed up there, and then a few fringe properties. And then you have the eastern corridor. So just to start the conversation, and we do have a very lengthy ordinance that has been drafted around design standards and guidelines, but as far as what we're trying to achieve policy-wise, and through economic development, through housing, that's not really spelled out very well in what the town has done thus far. So, at our last community engagement meeting, we heard kind of the importance of, hey, we need to look at mixed use areas. We need to look at, these are the areas where kind of we need to concentrate, if we are to develop housing, affordable and attainable housing, the eastern corridor especially, and then kind of urban redevelopment downtown. That was one suggestion that was brought to the table. So this document, and I'll bring it up, but you also have a copy in front of you, tries for our downtown mixed use district without going really in, not really looking at site design or building design yet. And I sent a kind of a smart growth link to you all. I don't know who had time to look at it, but this document here is in no way code or anything, but is to try to go through the intent of what maybe how a mixed use district looks in Lyons and what it's trying to achieve, and then we can try to address code, over the next few months to try to get us to where we are. But as far as, most district intents, and right now I just called it the DMU just because it's easy to say, is the DMU zone intends to provide a zone district that encourages a vibrant mixed-use area that supports a variety of uses and amenities. Structures built within this zone should focus on form and scale and should interact with pedestrian amenities. So again, that aligns with what the comp plan says is we're trying to build and redevelop and revitalize. Oh, here you go.
Okay, thanks.
And revitalize our downtown. And, you know, most planners would agree that in order to really revitalize a commercial corridor, you need you need kind of three things. You need a vibrant space for businesses to grow and flourish. So you have public infrastructures, beautification, you know, all of that, whether it occurs through a business improvement district or, you know, a revolving grant fund, which the town already has. You need that. Then you need flexibility in your code to give developers options of what uses they can put, you know, in a structure, but then also have flexibility in uses that can go in a structure. So what this tries to accomplish is, again, kind of, and this is just me writing, so these are all, and trying to take the comp plan and kind of at least what I can gather from past notes about this conversation. So kind of the key characteristics are, it's a central business district serving local and regional area. The DMU contains a diverse mixture of uses, including commercial, office uses, community facilities, and multifamily residential uses. The DMU serves as an area for community events and socialization. DMU is designed as a pedestrian scaled center with small block sizes, connected street networks, and wide sidewalks. And the DMU shall encourage urban redevelopment and infill. So at least from what I can gather, those points have been relatively important to most in the community through these processes. Is that generally, does that correlate with past? It's hard sometimes to step in right when a comp plan has been just adopted, because you don't have all that community context. So again, the dimensional criteria, really just the important thing to note here is, you know, for these areas to be truly successful, you really need zero lot line. You need buildings to face and interact with the sidewalk, be pedestrian scaled. Maximum building height, you know, again, if the community wants housing to be concentrated in already urban areas, you know, right now it can be 35. In no way am I saying that 40 should be, you know, a new standard, but that does allow for 4 floors by only adding 5 feet to, you know, our current code. And so you could have restaurant, office, and then 2 levels of housing on top, and then you pick up a lot of units. So again, that's just giving developers more area to work within their block.
Just a local twist on that is that building heights that would limit the view of Steamboat Mountain.
Yeah.
Have been objected to.
Sure.
Strenuously in the town.
Sure.
Just so you know.
Is 40 already below that, or 40 at the right? We're at 40 right now, right?
We're at 35,
We're
right?
at 35, okay, and that's,
And the concern is people walking along the south side of Main Street looking north.
Can't see.
Yeah, the theory is that if it's 40, you can't.
Okay.
okay, so they already, okay.
Well, people have, you know, I'm not
Suggested it.
suggesting that.
Sure.
Yeah, no, okay.
appropriate or inappropriate, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that historically,
Sure.
that's true, just so you're aware.
Yeah, and the goal here, again, I don't try to look through everything. I know it seems since I've been here, I talk about housing a lot, which is interesting because I come from an environmental planner background. So, you know, I've been involved in housing, but it seems, you know, even in my work in Colorado Springs and over the past 2 years, housing has just become a large issue in all communities. So at least it's not the basis of all conversations, but you know, it at least needs to be a tangent. So for that, you know, 35 to 40, and you'll see kind of this affordable and attainable housing provision bonuses. So you can leverage your mixed use district or your urban infill to get, you know, to give somebody that option. Well, if you do want to if you want to dedicate and deed restrict, you know, a certain proportion of your units, you pick up an extra 5 feet and you can have, instead of 3 stories, you can have 4 stories. So.
Yeah, I think Boulder's got density bonuses to the developers if you do affordable housing. So is that what workforce is affordable housing?
Workforce is both affordable and attainable.
Okay.
So anywhere from 0 to 160 AMI.
Okay.
Sorry, 120 AMI.
It would actually be awesome to have a good sized building on the 4th and Main corner where that was burned down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be
Yeah.
awesome in so many ways. Just be aware of the history. That's all.
Yeah.
Right now, we have excellent views there of Steamboat Mountain. I'd rather have,
A big hole there.
yeah, something else there.
So you'll see this peppered in, the maximum building height, currently how it reads, 35 or 40, where 24% of residential units are workforce. Maximum lot coverage, again, I think lot line to lot line is just fine, but as far as kind of the historic character of Lyons, I think trying to control lot coverage a bit, so 75, you know, but also 90%, again, if 24% are residential for workforce. And that's twice our commitment from Prop 123. Go ahead.
And that means, so maximum lot coverage and setbacks, so you could put the building right at the sidewalk.
That's
but
correct.
you'd have to leave some space in the back.
Yeah, or around the sides, yeah.
Around the sides, okay.
And again, another reason why minimum lot coverage will be important for our community is tight. We don't have a parking structure, so there needs to be allocation for, you know, private alleyway, things like that. So we just need to make sure that can work within our code. Maximum residential density calls for mixed use within the comp plan to be up to 16 units per acre. Again, none of this is my direction for code. These are kind of the broad concepts that we need to talk about, and I just wanted to get these in front of you all so you can go home and kind of think about these. Minimum residential units to be provided. So this is where we really can leverage these properties to get housing. Is if you're a 1-story structure and you want to redevelop or develop, you do not have to provide residential units. If you're a 2-story structure, 40% of the total square footage, 3% 60, 4% 75. Again, those numbers are arbitrary, completely completely up for conversation, or can just be completely gotten rid of. But this is a way that other small towns have tried to address kind of urban infill and ensuring that we get some residential units when these properties are redeveloped.
When would this get activated? Obviously on new construction, but substantial renovation, or is there?
Yeah, so that's up again, that's something that we need to explore is when, you know, a lot of towns it's 50%, if you're adding more than 50% of square footage or 60% of the assessed property value. There's a lot of different metrics, but that will be something that we need to define of what that means. And again, this standard is not required for a hotel or motel use. The reason for this exemption is just, it doesn't make sense. You know, it would be nice if it's a requirement for hotels to at least have some other active use on the bottom floor, such as a restaurant or something. But again, that's something we can discuss. Minimum workforce units to be provided. So again, 1-story, it's NA, but if you are providing 12% of total residential units, 2-story, 12%, 3-story, 24%, and 4-story. Again, since you're picking up that extra 5 feet, it's the community's expectation that you'll provide more deed restricted units.
If I read those So residential units to be provided for, like four-story structures, 75% of total square foot. And then four-story structure for workforce units, 50% of total. So so in that case, half of the units would be workforce housing.
That's correct.
75% of the house has to be housing of some type, 70% of the
Yeah,
building.
50% of that 75
Oh, 50% of that 75.
would be,
Okay,
that's correct.
okay.
Yeah, so there's still room for market rate,
Yeah.
you know, but again, if you're wanting to go high, it's the community expectation that there's some added value back to the community outside, of course, any redevelopment is going to add value to the community.
Mhm.
But through a housing perspective, again, leveraging this urban redevelopment. And I say urban lightly, it's a small community, I get that, but it is urban redevelopment.
This is workforce oriented. A lot of
Sure.
this, but, does that accommodate the issue with seniors, moving out of their larger homes into, something? Is that even considered in this, or?
We could certainly, I mean, that can be broadened, it
That's
doesn't,
one of the concerns, I think, in
Sure.
this community, I'm living it, but, I mean, over 3,000 square foot home, and you're an empty nester, or even, somebody who's a widow or widower, but wants to stay in Lyons.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
Where do you go?
You can't go anywhere right now.
Sure.
And so there ought to be some at least tangential
I have that.
recognition of that.
So I'll just add all my notes on here. Yeah, I can certainly, that can be, that can be a certain percentage of kind of what workforce means, and I don't know how to better define that,
Over
but.
55, or no?
Is it really workforce or is it market-based, but just smaller, more diverse sizing?
Yeah.
Well, so that there would be, it doesn't have to be subsidized in any way,
Right.
So, and it doesn't have to be below necessarily a certain level, but
Yeah, because
it's halfway between market rate and availability. It's more availability than accessibility.
well, so what this would do though, in itself, if you have a 3-story structure, 40% would be market rate, and by just a developer's perspective, those would likely be smaller units, which on the market should be cheaper.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect. But it's just that somewhere there would be a mention so that the aggregate numbers don't end up being, enough to cover workforce and enough to cover, sort of, higher income, younger people.
Sure.
But there's also this category of seniors who.
Empty nesters.
Downsizing opportunities.
Okay.
Can I ask this might be getting too detailed, but I know at 3 stories, you don't require an elevator, but I think at 4 stories, you require an elevator. Is that a cost prohibitive thing for, like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting too detailed about this, but I know that's why a lot of structures don't go above 3 because of that, so.
Sure.
And I know an elevator, well, whatever you call it, is shaft. It introduces different mechanics in building, and that's.
Yeah. Again, I guess the hope here is that we're providing that flexibility for
Yeah,
that developer
yeah,
that
okay.
has that money to do
Yeah, exactly,
it,
okay, yeah.
And a
Exactly,
4-story would certainly make that property long-term more economically viable.
Yeah.
Andrew, what happens with this overall? Like, is this an internal staff document that gets improved? Or is this something that goes to the public?
No, it's public now.
Okay, so it's public now, but like in terms of adoption, I guess I'm curious what the steps are.
Yeah, so right now, these are kind of the large these are the large ideas of a mixed use ordinance.
Uh-huh.
So we go through these and we kind of get a conceptual agreement of what, each one of these looks like. If, 35 or 40 is gonna, if that's something that we would like to consider. And then staff goes back and drafts code to actually start to build this into a code that would go into the ordinance.
I see, and then the code goes through the public process.
That's correct. With first and second readings.
Would it, this seems very important,
Mhm.
and that I recognize that we have that public process, but would it make sense to maybe hold some public interest or solicit input before making code?
Yeah, so we have right now, the schedule that we discussed, after this meeting, and we got off one meeting, my apologies, we had an IGA joint meeting, so we're off a week. So we have kind of a rough concept draft, that's what we're looking at, we're just looking at those concepts. And then it's the goal for the next meeting to take this public and try to see kind of what this will look like before we draft true code. So kind of the goal of this meeting is not tonight, but to get your all's input, kind of ideas, it's valuable about that 5 being discussed in the past and how, this was a non-starter with the community because it would block your steamboat. But kind of having this, ready and then discussing these ideas with the public at the next meeting. And again, we can pump the brakes at any time if we need to have another meeting to kind of go over this and then go public. These are dates that are flexible.
On the one hand, I really like it that you're putting forth specific ideas for people to react to. On the other hand, I'm sure unintentionally, but I guess it kind of feels leading.
Okay,
Like, and I'm just thinking like about the last IGA,
Sure.
the public meetings there, for example. I'm not an expert in public process.
Sure.
But is there a benefit to taking a step back and having some conversations with people? What would you like the downtown to look like?
Well, that's part of what the comprehensive plan was about, you know, and I mean, you bring it, and I think that I got the I used to do this all the time in transportation planning too, is that, it feels a little like, you're proposing alternatives since so people feel like you're trying to push something on them, you've already decided, but that's what the public process is for. Is that to involve you and give you, and it gives you the opportunity to modify or even.
Yeah, you're saying that we've already done this in the comp plan, and you are taking the comp plan and developing this further.
well, certainly, so through,
And they still have the rest of the public process to do it too, if there's more to it,
yeah, so again, in no way are these code recommendations. They're just the buckets for us to discuss and bring to the community. There are, general consensus in the comp plan of what the downtown core or the eastern corridor
Oh, and
should
then-
look like.
And the affordable housing goals too, like, it wasn't that that the town, when they dreamt up affordable housing goals, they're actually in the comprehensive
Sure,
plan, and some of the proposals we have are trying to address that. It doesn't mean people like them. It
sure.
just means that was there, and that's part of the public process, so it's to remember it's a public process.
I guess I
Yeah.
would like to recommend then that not necessarily a change to your process, but perhaps include the exact language from the comp plan,
Okay,
is part of this document as the
Okay.
introduction.
Sure.
And then we see like what was envisioned there
Okay.
and how specific or not that it got.
okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay,
And, just for my own sake and going through this process a few times with different communities, I have found that if you don't put up a wall for the community, and I said this, I think maybe at the IGA meeting, but if you don't put up a wall for the idea balls to be thrown against, it's just chaos and the balls are just hitting everybody in the room. So we at least need to come up with some framework of these are the common tools that are used. Now let's let's do it the Lions way. But I will add, that recommendation, to this document, to make sure.
Yeah, and something similar to what you just said, sort of in plain English for folks, as a preamble to the whole thing would be helpful.
Sure,
So that people don't, somebody gets a copy of this as it is and says, oh my God, there's going to be a
Yeah.
40-foot building
Yeah.
right in the middle of
No,
the
no, no.
street.
This is exactly what they'll do.
that is not the intention of this. And again, the intention stated a few weeks ago was, I have always erred and enjoy the community process. And it's, that first meeting, we don't even have a draft ordinance. We just have buckets, and let's see what buckets we want to fill. And let's have those conversations with the community. Then we come back and we try to address it through code. Then we have another meeting with the community. And that's at least been fairly successful.
And just a little preamble.
Sure, no, that makes
Makes
sense.
it clear that, this is like starter thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really just a framework for
Yeah.
discussion.
yeah, which is excellent. I do think it's good to put something out to
Yeah, that
stimulate
we have
this
to-
discussion.
Yeah.
So some people are gonna be in favor of some of it.
Sure.
Some people are gonna be opposed to some of it, but then you sort through that.
I don't know if there's any way to like involve, like you said, when it says 40-foot building, 30-foot, and people are just imagining this.
Sure, yeah,
But it's like, I want people's creativity to be stimulated.
Yeah.
To make it exciting, instead of just thinking of a 40-foot building.
Yeah.
Like, what are the types of buildings that you could imagine or?
Sure.
So people can think, oh, well, the downstairs is a restaurant.
Yeah.
The second floor is office, and we've got some housing, maybe on the top, there's a rooftop.
Yeah.
Or something that makes them.
Rooftop
feel
bar.
romantic.
yeah, so we'll go into that here in a second.
Okay, so that makes it romantic, makes it more romantic.
Sure. Yeah, and I have some examples. You had asked a few meetings ago for examples, and I'll pull those up here in a minute. So again, parking we'll have to discuss. Again, in no way is this, right now, we allow on-street to be used in our commercial district, and we allow for, parking agreements between property owners. So I just kept that as stasis. But you do run the risk, if you're drafting code to really stimulate economic development and you do a good job, you always run into a parking problem. So it's just a conversation we need to have about what does parking look like. Economic development is always this thing where if you do a good job, you create a big problem, and then you have to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes I find helping people understand the current state and then the future state is
Yeah.
helpful. So maybe too, as you reiterate on this, what is their current code?
Sure.
As you just
Okay.
shared around the parking, and then how this proposal is different
Okay.
and why we think it would help accelerate our
Sure.
comp plan goals. Sometimes can be helpful. And can I just ask another quick question?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, how many two-story buildings do we have on Main Street right now?
yeah, so I went out and
Do we
looked.
have some? I'm
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, we
clueless
do.
on that.
Yeah, about 6 or 7.
Do we have any three-story?
I don't, I went out and looked in an inventory, I did not see any. So again,
So
you have.
35 is already 3.
You have your aspirational, and again, the difference between, in the town's context right now, the difference between 3 stories and 4 stories is 5 feet, which is substantial, but I'm 5'5", I'm not that tall. So that's me standing on a roof. You can use me as a story pole. So again, but in no way advocating for that extra 5 feet, but again, using that as a way to create density.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart. And this is all, and the more stories you add, the more this pencils out for
Sure.
a developer. And that's why we're incentivizing
Sure.
this, right? We're proposing to incentivize.
I think I'm gonna wait till the end to.
Okay.
Okay.
give my-
All right, then again, we need to address parking and what that looks like. And then right now is not the time to be talking about site design and building design, but I did kind of throw at least the general tools out. So again, building siding is always important in these districts to make sure that they affront the, you know, the street and they are activated with the street. Land use floor integration is just a fancy thing for, you know, if you have a restaurant, just put it on the bottom floor. You know, if you have an office, maybe lawyers don't always have to be on the bottom floor. Maybe they can be on the second floor, you know? So just trying to encourage
Yeah.
uses to, again, engage the public walking
Yeah.
down the street. Building clustering. So what this gets at is if multiple structures are gonna be built on a lot, you know, how can we use that clustering or the orientation of those structures to create pedestrian spaces and to create places that make, you know, the community more engaging. And that creates pedestrian-oriented spaces. So you see them every day. I'll bring up a few examples, but you know, you have two buildings, you have a landscape area, or you have a restaurant, you know, and it has outdoor seating in a little alleyway. You have an area for public art, you know, just a little alcove off the sidewalk that's engaging and becomes a place where people, you know, enjoy. And then you always, this is every code because I guess some people do janky things, but, you know, these things need to be high quality. You don't need to be putting a $25 Lowe's bench out in these spaces, you know, because they end up reflecting, people think they're town-owned spaces almost all the time if they're engaged with the sidewalk. So, you know, they just need to look like, you know, they would be of public quality. Outdoor lighting, lighting has always been important, so, you know, has to follow our zoning ordinance, or, you know, if alternative ideas, it would be my suggestion, Board of Trustees give approval. Have nothing in the way of landscape requirements, but we will need to discuss those, kind of landscaping and how it's incorporated with the building and how it engages again with the street. We'll need to discuss prohibited plants not to be able to use. A lot of communities, for a good example, they have outlawed cottonwood trees for fire mitigation. So that might just be, you know, again, not here, not this conversation, but that's kind of detail I would like to go in with the community and with you all in the future.
Question, so pedestrian oriented spaces. I mean, if you look at downtown today, there's quite a bit of service industries which aren't terribly pedestrian friendly.
Sure.
Is there a way through this code we can encourage more retail? And whether it's through
Sales
zoning or
tax
some other
generation.
mechanism, because, I mean, yeah, it's half real estate offices or
Yeah.
offices or other kind of offices, so.
So again, I think that gets into a little bit of this land use floor integration and whether we make it less of a, you should do this, or, you know, this is the use, these are the use types that we would like to see. I don't know, but yeah, that's a great question.
Well, and I think we're going to what David's saying is that that's the point of having the residential in there. It is because you're promoting higher density, which could support more retail and more desire to have retail be in those spaces as opposed to service like a realtor.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, just building design standards, again, these aren't meant to be code, but just to start conversations. Building massing, again, massing is gonna be really important. We don't want to see, you know, huge, you know, 50-foot facades with no design. The good thing about this is we have a very long document, 49 pages. For commercial development and mixed use development design standards that we can glean a lot of, but perhaps, you know, use outright. But I haven't had time to go through all of these. I will advocate that this code be as simplistic and as user and developer friendly as possible. Just because, you know, whether I'm a developer or if I'm somebody just trying to have a restaurant with, you know, community table above. I don't wanna have to read through 80 pages of text just to try to understand. So always, again, err towards the side of trying to make code as user-friendly as possible.
Yeah, that's why this code is not in the municipal code. This document is not in the municipal code. The,
2013.
yeah, the PCDC, sort of butted heads with the, board of
Okay.
trustees, and so it never got passed. And so
Okay.
that's why you ended up with commercial design guidelines, which are like 6, 7, or 8
Yeah,
pages.
not very long.
That although we did promise that once the comp plan was finished, that we'd go back to those design guidelines and update them to be consistent with the comp plan.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's been something that has been wanted for a very long time. And it was, I mean, it was quite a extensive process to get down to 8 pages.
Yeah.
It's a long
We
document.
did that for quite a while ago. It was,
The commercial design guidelines.
right,
It was a
Yeah.
process that we went through as PCDC and it, to get it done. And then the Board of Trustees did pass that.
mhm,
But the part of the issue was historically, the early, like 2009, 10, 11, 12 BCDC era was, how can we absolutely positively make sure we never have a McDonald's
Yeah.
in lines? And that's sort of a little bit of what's behind
Huh.
the length and
Okay.
some of the odd detail.
I will say where there's the economy and McDonald's will go. There's a really nice, really bougie community outside of Asheville, Biltmore Village. And it's a Bavarian style McDonald's.
Yeah, they do. They've-
Extremely, I mean, the materials are, I mean, it's a great looking building. It looks like a historic structure, you know, like, and so where there's an economy, if at some point Lyons had the economic base to support a subway, they certainly would
There
want
was
to do
one.
that.
there
Oh,
was
okay.
one once. Ran out of town.
Yeah, none of those PCDC members are in any role anymore. So
Sure.
it's a fresh,
You can have another one come back.
no,
No,
that's
no.
not who, he wasn't there then.
Oh,
No, he wasn't part of that. No. That's code.
So other things that we'll need to discuss, and again, they're red because I didn't even wanna
Yeah.
talk about them right now. Building materials, building color. Again, there's a balance here. I think you need to provide great flexibility. There needs to be a large palette. There needs to be a large, grouping of building materials that are allowed. And kind of, we need to make sure that we build that flexibility, but keep it looking like our historic downtown, which is a very, there's a fine line, and we'll have to figure that out as a community.
We don't wanna look like a gender reveal.
And then this one's important. It's not found in a bunch of codes, but it is, in some, but minimum glass coverage for structures, having enough windows and doors makes
Yeah.
all the difference in the world, or it looks like an Amazon warehouse, so that's one of those I just wanted to throw out as an idea starter. Entrances and orientation, again, I've beat this one to death, but making sure, again, that these are activated
Yeah.
spaces. And then, I went for a little tour. We'll need to really look at roof design as well and kind of define what that character looks like in the town right now. And kind of how, how to use current building practices, current building styles, and make sure that we don't lose Lyons's community character through those.
Can we add rooftop bar as one of those options?
So,
I think the hotel's supposed to have a good.
Yeah, actually, yeah, isn't it?
I don't know where it dropped off, to be quite honest. I had in here, oh, here you go. So what we don't want, if you are gonna go, and again, say we, but you see the bad aspects of this. So I did put, there should be a 25-foot minimum upper story setback from any property line above 2 stories. So that does take care of just, you're walking down the street and it's just, it's too urban of a space. And the great usage of that setback is balconies and green roofs. So you're allowing that space to be habitable, but it just can't be built structure.
So the taller stories would be on the back.
Yeah, so you'll have 2 stories, and then if you wanna go above that, you're step back 25 feet from
So you
that
have the
building
balcony and
face.
then you might have, still have another story of it, but it's 25 feet.
That's correct.
back. So you would have like a roof, a usable balcony that's, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and if it's apartments, it's, outdoor space,
Oh, that could
or,
be, yeah, okay.
it's giving developers and giving options to be able to create really good products for both commerce and habitability. That's the goal. What that looks like, I don't know yet.
One of our previous planners called it a wedding cake
Yeah.
design.
So I have 2 comments that,
Mhm.
I think that for, Barney, you probably have a better perspective of this. I mean, we've had a 3-story allowance for downtown in our code for years. That's never been
Sure.
taken advantage of until the hotel came along. And a lot of people were really upset that that would be 3 stories. And yet, and I think did not realize that that was actually already in our code and had
Yeah.
gone through the process 10 years prior. So my gut reaction, intuition is that anything above 3 stories is going to be a deal killer. And
Okay.
you'll have a similar Monday night meeting that was just a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Yeah, and can I add to that? And that's where I was thinking maybe the bonus density stuff gets, when you, instead of adding 4 in there, do it at the 3rd story.
Mhm.
Okay, so everything just gets, what we have shifted down a floor. Okay.
That's the intuition that I have for our
Okay.
community, that the response you'll be getting. And then parking, super passionate about parking, and granted, we just increased our spaces. But that became a really hot topic to not have a hotel as well.
Sure.
And because really, in the mind of a lot of people was, well, the hotel will take up what we just built.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the case, because there are other options around the community, especially Second Avenue, and there's some negotiations there that will probably still
Sure.
have to take place. But that one is gonna be
Okay.
a really big stressor, and it still is, and I don't think people, and we really will see this summer,
No, well, I
what
was
is
just saying,
Broadway gonna look like?
well, I was to say, I've done parking space, and you'll wanna, now that we have it, you can start, you'll be able, and people start
That's not what I
knowing
want.
about, then you can start seeing how it's actually being used. And you can start seeing both the like Sandstone concerts, you'll be seeing Meadow Park, you can actually hire, once it's snowed and summer tourism, and you'll start seeing, you'll be able to start seeing how, the usage and how much we really need. By the way, you know a parking lot's full, they say when a parking lot's about 85% full, 85, that's the rule. That if people start thinking of thinking a parking lot's full when it's about 85%, that's the rule that planners use. So,
This is a bit of a tangent, but as far as processes facilitated by myself, this picture tells everything that I shoot for. So I do a running circuit with Western Planner about public engagement. And this was the first meeting I ever had. It was very unpopular. I asked these ladies what they liked about the plan, and as you'll see, there's just a big X. But you can tell by my face that I'm in defense of the plan. And this is like one of the whole lessons of this session that I give. I just did it, Rocky Mountain Land Use Planning, it is not our job to defend planning. It is my goal through this process that I never have to look like this, that I'm never in defense. And, the IGA has been a different thing, but I never truthfully never want to be in that position where we're going through a community process and we're having to defend something that we're doing. So I just, keeping that in the back of what I'm trying to do and the process that I'm trying to follow is, yeah, there is going to be some times where there will be pushback just through a planning or an economic development perspective of is 5 feet, you know, is that allowance worth providing housing for empty nesters? Those are just conversations, but never, again, having code ready to review and having our first community meeting. I never want to do that, so.
One of the things, if we ever do, may I see where your gut's going about, like, we only have 2 stories in town, like, I don't think your gut says that going above 3 may not be realistic, but with all the computer technology we have, so you can do some simulations easily that really.
That's a really valid point.
Right, that you could give people simulations, is that extra, I mean, now if we don't have 3 stories, and that's really gonna make a difference, but if you did 4 stories, then you could start seeing.
Yeah.
And you could do it from different places in town, like coming in along Q6, I see Steamboat Mountain all the time, and it doesn't affect.
I
But you start
support that idea. I think that'd be very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yes, I worked for about, I don't know, 8 years ago, the town of Highlands, which is a small community. So I was the planning director there for about 2 years. And we went through the code for the downtown was terrible. So we went through this process. And we made it a lot easier to navigate, a lot more directive because what we found is the developers, you know, if they have direction and it goes along with what they want to do, makes their lives easier because they're not having to come to a public hearing and be like, oh, this is what I'm doing. So, you know, I did pull up a few examples of what came out of that process. So this is a great one. So housing was a big issue. We had 3 very, very, I guess, important in the golf scene, but popular golf areas, lots of trails. So it's a recreation community. So we wrote to the code and we incentivized housing development. And this, through creativity, you would never think that you would get housing at a gas station, but that's exactly what it became. We were able to incentivize, we still needed the gas station. And we didn't want that use to change, and the town supported that use, but it turned into a visitor center. It turned into a small grocery store, deli, and there are 2 apartments now. One was workforce, one was market rate, that were all redevelopment from a gas station. So I guess that's why I'm hopeful for this process is you can see, you know, if given good direction and given direction of where the community wants to go, I mean, this is as non-invasive as planning gets. I mean, you go from this use to this use by just giving community standards and allowing developers to be creative.
Yeah, we have an opportunity for something very close to that with the diner bar.
And then another example,
It has 2 apartments up, or could be 2 apartments upstairs.
another example, this is a classic space in Southern Appalachia. The amount of Instagram hits, I don't know. But this before, and unfortunately it doesn't go back enough. This was a pretty ugly little courtyard, but this ended up being a public-private partnership with the town. So developers came in and 3 developers got together and redeveloped this entire area. And then the town came in and helped turn kind of this courtyard, very dated, into what it is now. And it houses 4 different restaurants, Kilwins, which is a big deal. I don't know if you have them out west, and then some art galleries. And then the last one, I can't pull it down. My little thing's getting in the way. Oh, darn it. Well, I did have a good one here. So this was a redevelopment project of these two buildings. And again, I don't have good pictures of what they look like. The quality's just not good. This structure was really bad. This was unused and this building hadn't been fixed. But as soon as we went through a whole visioning for the downtown, and as soon as we adopted code, again, we picked up two buildings that ended up, especially the Ugly Dog. We have rooftop deck, and then we had two apartments being developed up top, and then redevelopment of commercial and or a restaurant and retail space below. So again, I just wanted to show, we're not trying to add restriction or change the community. That's not the goal here. But if you really come together as a community and you really outline where you want to grow and you write your code to be specific but broad enough to give developers incentives to do what they want to do, you do get good projects.
If you have any, when you do have public engagement, I would suggest starting with these stories.
Okay.
Before you hit them with the.
Yeah, say, hey, this is what did look like and what it can look like.
Sure.
And there are possibilities here.
Yeah.
It's not like we're taking away your town from you.
No.
Yeah.
The gas station, that won a few awards. It has been a very successful, and it's that model of flipping gas stations for affordable housing is really interesting, but it doesn't happen very often. But, all right, I'll go.
So does the geography of the downtown mixed use correlate with the brownfield?
It does. That was a bit purposeful as well.
Okay, cool. All right, so how is inclusionary zoning gonna help all this?
Tell you what, so.
In 32 minutes, or 22 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. All right, so again, these are in no way these are just to start conversation of where we could head. And to try to make some sense of all of these conversations that we've had with the community, and all of what has been drafted. And again, we didn't adopt the housing studies, and understand that there are some major, that I myself, some of that data, it's hard. And then also with the comprehensive plan. But overall, kind of our goal, and Boulder County's goal and Colorado's goal is that 12% of our housing stock, currently and in the future, be allocated for affordable and attainable housing. And again, there's nuance there. We need to really ensure, as we kind of learn through the Summit Housing, that we're housing our need. And we're ensuring that attainable piece is very important to this community. So, that's kind of the overarching goal here, is that, for new or replatted subdivisions or new mixed-use developments, that we're keeping to that 12%. Again, nothing about current neighborhoods, nothing about current infrastructure. This is all new development and substantial redevelopment, which again, we have yet to define. But again, just to kind of at least set up a framework of what this looks like, your breakdown between affordable and attainable, your for sale unit AMI maximum, hopefully for your affordable is 40%, attainable, I split the difference at 80%. For rent unit is the same, 40 to 80. Again, these are kind of trying to follow Nederland, Longmont, and Boulder, because, again, it makes sense for us we can do things our way, but for developers that are developing in multiple jurisdictions, it's just nice if we somewhat correlate. And then here's the AMI breakdowns, just because we talk about AMI a lot. I would never codify this just because it changes year after year, and that would be ridiculous for us to have to do every year. But just to provide context of what these numbers mean, I provided it here. So what this looks like when a new developer comes in at their when they come in for their subdivision agreement or whatever, they would have their affordable housing agreement as well, and this would ensure that the following kind of are met.
And that's the type of work the housing authority.
That's correct.
Person could
Yes.
do.
Yeah, this would certainly not be in my wheelhouse, and I do not want to make things up as I go along. So that would be another great benefit to having, a housing staff.
You should know that with the New Summit Housing, which is near me and Amy, that's 100% rental.
Yeah.
It's not owner. I think a lot of people don't quite fully understand that.
Yeah.
100% rental, which, I mean, usually for neighbors, I prefer people who, the owners live in their house, because usually they're better maintained. I mean,
Sure.
that's just that's a well-known and just
Yeah.
general, but and it was in the text of our PUD to allow affordable housing, and like what you're saying, it was not planned to be there initially, but yeah.
Yeah, and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, you're done, you're done.
Yeah, and the rental, it's easier, I think, to develop rental, but it's certainly easier, for Chaffa or whoever's administrating these for them to be rental. Keeping up with deed restricted for sale lots and having a compliance officer every time there's a real estate transaction to make sure that there's not more than 10% or whatever that measure is, that takes a lot more work. So that's where the value of having this authority, I think, will come in, because you need for sale units. Everybody needs to be able to build equity, and certainly, that's.
Cause I think some of the neighbors in our neighborhood, they were like, I mean, they're rental, they're not
Yeah.
they're not owner occupied, no, actually, they're 100% rental.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't necessarily against affordable housing, it's just they didn't know it was gonna be rental,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a homeowner, but I am also a renter, and I will say there's certainly, being a renter can be stigmatized among some people. So even if you do take care of your property. So, the hope is that outright 12% of the square footage or whatever that you're building your market rate, 12% of that subdivision or that mixed use development you would build those in that same area. It is important, though, like everything, to provide for alternative compliance, because you don't want to tell developers or somebody wanting to build that they can't do this. So there are ways, and these are from the city of Longmont, Boulder, and I think Netherlands also going to be working on these as well. If you don't want to outright comply, you can use any of these alternative compliance measures, and you can mix them. You can mix and match and able to meet your workforce housing criteria. So fee in lieu, a developer may pay square footage fees to the town. I put, again, right now it's the town, there's no peak to peak housing authority, but again, I just want to have that broad discussion for the Affordable Housing Fund. And in big red highlights, we will need a professional other than myself to set this fee. I am not a real estate professional. I do not have enough knowledge to set this. So this would be something that we would need to seek. But the general idea is that, the required fee in lieu shall be calculated using total combined finished square footage of all proposed market rate homes in the development. And then you have this convoluted equation, but there's just no way to get around it. Equations are the easiest way. I've seen terrible spreadsheets where you plug in all these different things and developers always mess things up. So this seems to be the easiest way.
And developers do that for schools,
Sure.
to school districts, right? You either have to dedicate land or pay a cash in lieu per rooftop. So that districts can build new schools and new development.
So the other way is offsite development and or rehabilitation and deed restriction. So if you want, if somebody was to build, for a 4-house subdivision or whatever, somewhere in town, and they didn't want to provide for this and it didn't make sense to them financially. Again, it would be the hope that the town would always want these units to be built together. But again, if developers do not or cannot do that, then they can be built, that requirement can be built offsite. I said anywhere within the town's plan area. Again, I don't know. These are just ideas. And then they can also go buy a unit somewhere within the town's plan area. And if it needs to be rehab it, then deed restrict it for affordable housing and meet their commitment in that way. again, trying to be flexible as possible. Land dedication, like you just spoke of, land may be dedicated to the town, in place of providing workforce housing options, as long as it meets the following criteria. And these criteria are important because the town does not need to have any junk
Yeah.
land or be making decisions if the land, we want to make sure that whoever's coming to the town with this, they've done all of the environmental work, drainage, all this stuff, and make sure that the town doesn't, it's just protecting the town in the future. And then if none of these work, some other sort of voluntary alternative agreement that the developer can propose, and it would go in front of the Board of Trustees, and that would be part of their subdivision agreement as well. And then the only exemptions that I saw, again, there are all kinds, and we can discuss them. There's some agricultural exemptions, but we don't have a lot of agricultural land. So this one, medium to high density rental projects, this is the town of Longmont, or city, or is it town? I think it's the city of Longmont. Rental projects within more than 12 units per acre will receive an exemption on the number of units provided above 12 units. So it's just not making it completely onerous for your multifamily projects. And again, all of this comes with a caveat that we're not going to see a lot of multifamily development. We just don't have the topography or land to do so. Oops.
Well, and excuse me, that's why this whole thing seems more suited for Longmont or
Yeah.
Boulder.
Sure.
I'm reading this going,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time buying into this. It also, and maybe number 4 takes into account, but 317 Evans, really, there's no deed restriction. It was just a
Yeah.
developer wanting to do the right thing. So not to squash creativity either,
Sure.
because some of this could scare.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just having a hard time really getting my head around this for
Yeah.
Lions.
Yeah, so that's the 317 Evans, those will not count towards our Prop 123. We can't use that stock. So again, we have that type of project, and those happen every now and then. I would say not very often, but they do. This is more kind of the meats and potatoes to ensure that we can meet our commitments. Again, this is completely up for all discussion and change. Just trying to emulate, common practices.
And our commitment's 3 units a year.
Yep, 3 units a year.
For 3 years,
We have 10 in the next 3.
yeah,
So we
okay,
haven't added 1, but after that, it's 3 per year.
for the next, is there
Infinity, I don't know. I can provide that information. I don't know the end date for Prop 123.
I don't think they do.
Yeah.
I think if you get the 3% a year for 3 years, then we'll come back and celebrate. So there are no certificates of occupancy that are on the table right now that could count towards the 3. Because I heard somebody from DOLA say it's when the clock starts, whenever that is, certificate of occupancy counts, even though you planned that years ago.
Yeah, it's my understanding, and I will verify this because this question has come up a few times. It is my understanding though, hold on. It's my understanding that COs from the date that it started only count, and only deed restricted or that meet their criteria count towards that commitment. I could be wrong, and I'll clarify that to this board, but that's my understanding.
this 317 Evans doesn't count, or no, it's just.
Summit won't count.
Summit won't count?
I don't think so, because, but again, I will check, but it's my understanding that Summit won't count. All of the ADUs, and again, ADUs are great, but unless they're deed restricted,
Okay,
or formalized to be workforce, they're just another house in the state's eyes. And
so like, that's the issue with 317 Evans
And what percentage of ADUs are on the books?
oh, I don't know,
I
no.
suspect Not many.
It just have to be deed restricted or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, there just has to be some legally and recorded mechanism how that is, you know, affordable or attainable.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, in no way, you know, it's hard, you know, because you don't want to disincentivize, you don't want to change your community. But you do want the benefits, or I don't know, it seems as though the town has wanted the benefits of Prop 123. So these are the mechanisms that go in place in order to do that.
And remind us what the benefits of Prop 123 are if we do meet our goals for the
Grant,
units.
staff assistance, just money from the state.
Like a lot of money or a little money?
I don't know, I can provide that
Kind
as
of
well.
wondering, like what's
Yeah.
the consequence of not
Not-
getting this? And if, I mean, if there's a pool of money out there and it's substantial enough for us to care about, can we somehow use part of it, like in advance, to incentivize any of the creation of what we want? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I would push on the summit. Are there some units that have not been occupied yet?
At Summit, yes, yeah.
Or the CO has
So
an issue?
I don't know, I can get that information.
Because I think rental still counts and it.
No, rental does count.
Yeah, so those are
It's between our
deed
units.
restricted or something, I mean,
Oh,
they're,
no, they're Chaffa property.
yeah, yeah.
The issue is when they were CO'd, and I'll have to, they would qualify if they were
Yeah.
built today and beyond. But
Yeah.
I don't know, so I don't wanna
They didn't-
misspeak.
CO doesn't mean lease, they're not the same thing.
No,
No.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know like fall last year was like the earliest move-ins and not even because of,
And then it just seemed like, why wouldn't Evans be
yeah, it's-
allowed? It just kind of makes no sense to me either, but,
Yeah,
They're
'cause
not
the
deed
market-
restricted.
huh?
They're not deed restricted.
Market rate?
But they're not market rate rentals.
Correct.
again, it's
yeah.
And
it's
maybe
umbrella approaches.
because you could argue whoever, let's say half the people move back in, then those are capped in the decade, even though
Mhm,
Yeah,
those are way below market.
mhm, mhm.
and they said we can't count those.
One thing I think is helpful is that we're not the only local municipality that will be engaged in 123.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think, you know, we want to look at what Longmont's doing, what
Yeah.
Boulder's doing. They have commitments for thousands,
Mhm.
not just 10, but thousands
Yeah,
of these. And so how are they going to do that? And I think we could get some ideas from them and maybe even grab on some coattails if somebody, you know, is building 1,700 new units in Boulder.
Maybe
Maybe we can get them to.
Tebow developed some Boulder.
Yeah, so use the same formulae in terms of size and lots and all that sort of
Construction
thing.
materials and,
Yeah.
yeah, the appropriations.
Yeah, to try to get some efficiencies of scale, since they're, you know, I mean, I did a little exercise earlier today about what we look like compared with other local area municipalities in terms of commitment, how much commitment. Ours is pretty low. It's less than Netherlands. Netherlands has committed to more, you know, low and attainable housing than Lyons, even though they have a smaller population. So we're not really, you
Netherlands
know,
smaller than us. Netherlands smaller than us?
yeah, they're about 1,500.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
we're,
Netherland proper, like I live in Netherland, but I don't live in Netherland, so.
Yeah, but, okay, their town boundary, they're only 1,500, okay. Yeah,
so
'cause-
same as Lyons, you know, we're 2,100, but it's probably 3,000 to 4,000 if you
Yeah,
include
it's,
Pinewood and all that sort of.
yeah.
So I think there's, you know, a real opportunity to learn from the, you know, the bigger organizations that are, you know, they've made some big commitments.
I think Megan wants to say something.
Yeah,
Oh, it's okay, it's different, so,
okay, well, one,
yeah.
actually, I have one last thing to say, and then there's a little complication based on our comp plan that we'll marginally addressed in these documents. And that was a pretty heavy commitment to environmental factors to combat climate change.
Okay,
So things like accommodating everybody who wants to park everywhere, and every car gets a
sure,
right to life, are things of the past.
sure,
That, seriously, and so we may want to introduce some thoughts at least to the population that says parking spaces are not all good.
Yep.
They're not all wonderful. They don't help everybody. They can be a problem also. So somewhere there ought to be some, at least recognition
okay,
that the comp plan spoke to that.
Sure.
Fair degree.
Mhm.
That's all.
Good point.
I just wanted to suggest if you weren't already planning to send this to the EDC
okay,
and to send both to Housing and Human Services.
okay. Yeah, my apologies, I'm still learning all
No,
the.
it's- Even as I said that, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, are there others? that are not thinking
So-
of it?
The last thing I'll say about Prop 123 is currently there are 202 jurisdictions in Colorado that have signed Prop 123 commitments. That is, there are 336 eligible local governments, but 90% of Colorado's population lives in an area that has, am I sharing my, oh, I'm sharing my screen, sweet. Has, these commitments. So outside of, I think there might also be some political pressure, and whether that's good or bad, not being, being the hole in the donut, I don't know. There's not value through a planning perspective to not be that community that's doing it your own way, but we certainly would be an outlier in Colorado.
Frederick, for example, has no commitment.
Okay,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But almost every other significant municipality around here does.
I mean, the money's supposed to help you meet your goals.
that's correct.
So like, I think the amount of money depends on what type of deal you're trying to put together, right?
Sure.
So if you can get those in there,
Yeah,
then it gives us a little time to get to like year 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And get the three or more,
and I think
if
that's,
the project pencils.
I think that's gonna be really valuable to these conversations, is these aren't punitive measures from the state. These aren't, these are, regional issues, town issues, and it's, what we're trying to do is come up with best, most responsible way for the town of Lyons to address these issues and be able to leverage these funds to, to help grow our economy and our market, So I don't know what that looks like and what that conversation, but that truly is the goal here, at least to me, is how can we maintain doing it the Lyons way and meet, if it says it has to be deed restricted, it has to be deed restricted, and there's nothing we can do about that, but where can we work in that space?
And that doesn't have to be the only space
That's right.
for our housing needs. Well, it seems like focusing on downtown is really smart.
Especially how our downtown is now.
Yeah.
My only thing is, I think you have to put, we've talked about affordable housing, attainable housing, it has to be, you have to put faces on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that people, because I never see anybody, say, I would like to live here, and I can't afford it, like, nobody stands up and does that. Rarely.
Okay, because I do see people doing that.
I saw one person at that first Monday night meeting.
Yes, that's what I heard.
Yeah, and just discussing, and bringing up what AMI means and what these income ranges actually are. I think there's also, and this isn't a Lions issue, it's a everywhere issue. Understanding that, 100% AMI, we're not talking about
Mhm.
the projects in
Indigent,
Detroit.
yeah.
We're
Well-
talking we're talking pricing of what a lot of people that live here now bought their houses at,
Yeah.
so and that's not the most popular thing to say, and in no way is that like, oh, well, you're here, but that's the problem, right? That's what we're looking at is we're looking at people that work here and have families, and
It's the same people that actually live here.
Yeah.
Not, if they tried now.
Yeah.
Couldn't buy that house.
I will say, I think none of the city and town employees that actually qualified to live in Summit because they made too much?
that's correct.
I mean, so that's, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the AMI for some of the, maybe it was 60%, which is pretty.
I could live in Summit if I had 3 more children, but I have 3,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I don't know if it's worth it, I have my hair,
You get
at
your
least
money.
at this point, but I think if I had 3 more just to live somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's, those stories, like
Yeah.
that puts, I don't.
I think putting the starting salary of a fire person or teacher in the same
Yeah.
frame, those things help put generic faces, but
Yeah, and I had those up,
Mhm.
most
Yeah.
of those employees, cannot live, especially if it's a 2-income household. Um,
Bumps it over the.
If they get married, they have to sell or move, I mean, that's, I don't know.
But yeah, we can close it out, I was just gonna bring up those,
The brackets there.
yeah. It's called Summit, right? I brought it up the other day. But it was like for a family of 4, I think it caps at 70,000.
And then four, okay, so.
But you have the expectation, you have 2
Husband, wife.
parents, they probably work, and
Working in.
even if both parents are making minimum wage. In Boulder County, minimum wage, it gets you pretty close to that max.
And then, or one parent's working and then one of them stays home, takes care of the kids.
Yeah.
And that might be more in there, yeah,
Here it is, I think.
yeah.
Do-do-do.
So,
So 3 person was 71, 4, 79.
CD.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard especially for families, and a lot of them that couldn't be rented out or had a hard time were the 3 bedrooms, just cause, that's how it goes, I guess, but fodder for thought, I guess.
yeah, and that was all funding from HUD, right, for,
Yeah, HUD through Chaffa, and then,
There's several.
so just
Yeah.
super restricted funding.
well, thank you all.
Thank
We
you.
will adjourn, 8:34, so.
Thank
4 minutes
you.
over. Thank you all.